Thank you so much, Bridget Hilton and Joe Huff, for coming on Wellness Your Way. I am super excited to have you both here today.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
having us.
Yes, I was telling you before we started recording that this is the first officially not directly health related set of guests that we've had. Although I think listeners of Wellness Your Way will understand completely how this all fits in, because we are all about holistic health around here, not just nutrition, certainly not something dogmatic. And what you are doing is adding so much health and so much joy to the world. So thank you for that. I've read your formal bios before we started this interview, but I'd love to hear just from each of you a little bit about who you are and how you ended up here.
Sure.
Should I jump off, Bridget? You want me to kick off a little? We'll do our superhero origin stories. Okay. How's that sound? Yeah. This whole journey, that our whole view of wealth, changed throughout our lives, and it started way back when. So, to give a little context, I was raised in the Midwest. My parents met on an assembly line making brake pads, and
Wow.
so it was, they both worked a lot. My parents were really awesome. But as a lot of families experience, we had a lot of financial insecurity in our household. But growing up, I wanted to be, rich. I wanted to be, mansions and Ferraris kind of rich. And it was a pretty far off dream, I think. But I was kind of a lost soul in high school. I didn't really have a lot of direction, and I wound up having some educational challenges. I got kicked out of school. I basically barely managed to get my diploma. And I think my life would have been dramatically different, but something happened right at that time. Right around my 18th birthday, my dad suddenly had what wound up being a near-death experience, but we thought he was having a heart attack. So we took him to the hospital, and it turned out he had heart failure and wound up going on the heart transplant list and life support. And it was just this moment of, wow, my dad was only 48 years old. And I was like, this is, this can happen. He had, up until then, he had just worked like his whole life. And I was just shook. I was really, it was one of those terrifying moments in life. It's really definitive moment for me, where it just made me realize that we don't have a guarantee on how much time we have to fulfill our goals and live our dreams. And luckily, my dad's story actually has a happy ending, but that terrifying moment gave me this great gift of urgency. It gave me this gift to start looking through a different lens. So my dad, he got the heart transplant, and he had to change his whole life. Literally, he wasn't doing anything for himself. He was literally just working. And again, that's not nothing, of course. He was taking care of his family and everything. But in whatever time he did have, he wasn't doing the things that mattered to him. So after his transplant, he created this whole new life that was just so remarkably different. It's like a movie. This was like the end chapter. Like, oh my gosh, yeah, it all works out, kind of. And that inspired me to figure out what I would do. And it was kind of interesting, because I just looked at it like, what would I do if I was in my dad's situation where I suddenly was out of time? What would be the things that I would regret? So I put those things kind of into a list and started trying to figure out how to do what I could with little to no money, and not really even knowing what I wanted to do. And that led me on this wonderful yet challenging journey through my younger years, where I was just trying to have all these experiences to try to not find myself in that situation. And I was trying a lot of things, and I was really broke the whole time. I was working multiple jobs, and it wasn't like I was suddenly I had financial freedom and could just travel the world and do these things. But what happened was I started meeting all these people through these experiences, and I started having more and more experiences, and opportunities started to happen for me to do more and more things. And all of that was just from taking action, I guess, toward life, right? And that really that led me to doing all these things that were just really fun. Like I tried stand-up comedy, and I went and learned how to ride a motorcycle, and I did just things that I had on this list that were just like really fun, life fulfilling things. And one of those things led to a friend that I had an experience with asking me to start a company with them. And I didn't know how to start a business, as you can probably imagine. That didn't come with my, my high school diploma that I barely got. They didn't have directions on starting a company. But what happened was, that company actually wound up working out, and we built a pretty successful little business, and that led me to trying even more things. And eventually I had another moment like my dad, though, where I was 10 years into this business and I realized I wasn't doing anything except working. So I kind of fell back in my ways. And at that moment, that gave me this clarity again, this urgency again to like figure out what I really cared about. And I left that company that I was so fortunate to have been able to start. And I started something to work with charities instead. And that was a really scary, terrifying decision. But from someone that had just for the first time in like his entire life attained some type of financial stability. And it was the best decision ever, because I left to do this thing. And in the next couple of years, I wound up traveling the world, and I helped people in Haiti get water filtration. I built schools in Guatemala, and we helped victims of human trafficking in Indonesia. We did all these really awesome things. And those experiences were so valuable to me, helping other people, but valuable to me directly also, because that was like when I felt like I was living my real self for the first time. And those experiences led me to meeting Bridget, and I'll let Bridget tell how our story dovetails together. So
Sure.
Oh,
So
amazing.
quick background on me. I grew up in the Midwest as well. I grew up in Flint, Michigan, which is, famous for things like a water crisis and Michael Moore movies. Not a super positive place in the news. And my whole family works for General Motors. But when I was a kid, I wanted something different. I was never interested in working in the auto industry, but I was super, super obsessed with music when I was a kid. And when I was growing up, it was like always my dream. Like all I wanted to do was like move to Hollywood and like work in music or movies or like something in entertainment. And I didn't really know anybody that was doing that. And everybody kind of like told me that I was being unrealistic, because like when you grow up there, there's no models of that, like there was no one that I knew that even came close to that. So what I did was like I started very, very small. So when I was 14, I like had my first job in quote unquote music, and I started doing things like distributing flyers at concerts, and getting coffee for people at radio stations. And I remember I skipped like my high school prom and homecoming to like clean up trash at like music venues, like literally get paid like $5 an hour, because I knew that like that was like my ticket out into like a different life. And after like 5 years of doing those like little jobs, the efforts like paid off, and I got a job in the mailroom of like the biggest record label in the world, which is Universal Music Group. And I remember that day like it was yesterday. I mean, at this point, it was pretty long ago because it was when I was 19, but it was like almost 20 years ago. But they told me that I would make 20 grand a year. And it was like, I literally thought I was so rich. Like when they told me that, I just remember it was like it was yesterday. It was like the first time in my life that I realized that if I took small steps towards a goal, like it could actually happen. So yeah, my job in the mailroom was basically like, the typical licking stamps, mailing boxes, but it led me to fulfilling the dream of moving to California. So when I was 21, I moved here, which is where I still live in Los Angeles. And I got this incredible like peek into like successful lives, like even though I was like making barely no money and I was like living in this like really crappy apartment with like 5 roommates, I was working with people that were at the beginning of their own careers, like Taylor Swift and Kanye and Drake and Rihanna and like Lady Gaga and The Weeknd, and my bosses were like these people that were like very successful, like executives, and they would bring me along to all of these like parties in Hollywood and like movie premieres and like fancy restaurants and things that I could have never imagined had I like just stayed in my hometown and not like taking these little steps. So over the next couple of years there, I got like that, true sex, drugs, and rock and roll experience that I had wanted as a kid, but only with a lot more like Microsoft Excel and cubicles than I thought. But one day at my office, I saw a video on YouTube of this woman named Sloan hearing for the first time. And she was 29, which was like close to where I was in age then. And it really it was like a light bulb moment that just got me thinking about how my life has changed so much because I had music in my life. And like, I don't know where I would have been had I not had that path. Probably, dead or on drugs or something like that. So I started thinking about how much it meant to me and how like lucky I was to have that. And I thought to myself, like, wow, wouldn't it be cool if I could just give like one person hearing? Like that would be such an amazing moment. But so I sent the video to Joe, and he was actually building schools in Guatemala at the time. He was the only person that I knew that like had ever done anything in charity, because I always thought that charity was something that like only really wealthy people could be a part of. And we were definitely not that. So long story short, I cashed in my 401k Universal, which was $5,000. It wasn't enough to start a company that ended up like, trying to compete with like the Apples of the world. But we basically started this company called Listen that makes headphones and speakers, and we give the proceeds to giving hearing to people around the world through our partner Starkey Hearing Foundation. So since then, that was in 2012, we've given over 50,000 people the gift of hearing.
Oh my goodness. I knew that before we got on this interview, and I still have physical goosebumps hearing that. 50,000 people have the gift of hearing because of you all. That's just incredible. Does it ever get old hearing that, even when you say it?
No, I mean, and it's crazy because in 2012, like when we saw this video, we were like what I said, like we were just like, oh my God, if just one person we could help, that would be the coolest thing ever. And a year later, like in 2013, we were like on the ground for the first time in Peru, and we had met this family with this girl named Maria, and they had heard about our mission somehow, I think like through a relative that like lived in that village. But she sat down like in front of us, and it was like, all the pressure was on. It was like, can she hear or can she not hear? And we gave her hearing aids, and like we like dialed them in. And I'll never forget like that, the first moment, like this is the first person we helped out of 50,000. It's like her eyes just like went super bright, and her parents like collapsed on the floor, and everyone was crying, and me and Joe were crying because we were like, oh my God, like we can actually accomplish these things if like we really try and we like put it out in the universe. So yeah, it doesn't get old. I love it.
Yeah.
It's the best job ever.
She left out too that that it was Maria's 18th birthday that day. She actually hadn't, her whole life they didn't know if she was ever going to be able to hear. They had never had any medical care to confirm that was possible. So it was
they told us like her biggest dream is to do that, because she didn't feel like she fit in with the other kids, and so all she wanted was like that. And it was like just such a powerful moment. And ever since then, it's we've traveled all around the world, and but I'll never forget that first time.
That is so incredible. And since then, and sounds like around 2012, you both have done so many different things in order to lead to this goal of giving more people the gift of hearing, and also to help many other people, even people who can hear, in many other ways. And one of the things you've done along that journey is the largest survey on experiences ever done, which is really cool. Can you share a little bit about what this even is and some of the findings that surprised you from that survey?
Sure. Yeah. So the survey was born out of, what happened was we got to this point, the latter part of working with 50,000 people giving hearing was, as we were growing our company, we were still this small brand, this small business that was literally giving like everything away to our charity partner, but we were having all these incredible experiences. But other brands were seeing the value in our mission, and they started, wanting to help and wanting to get involved and wanting to partner. So we wound up with partnerships with Amazon and Google and just huge companies, and like Spotify, and doing all these things. We became the on-air headphones for Delta Airlines. And as those things were happening, people kept saying and looking at us saying, wow, you guys must be huge. You guys must be just absolutely, killing it. And we would just laugh and go, we're actually more like experiential billionaires. So the experiences that the company was born out of us wanting the experience of giving someone hearing. And then so that was like the natural progression, was as we started to realize that's really what we cared about. When people were asking us if we were wealthy, and we're like, we're not, but we're actually having pretty amazing lives we felt really, really good about. So as we kind of got to like a couple of years ago, I don't know if you heard, there was this thing called COVID where it shut down the world. And
Yes.
yeah, well, when that happened, we couldn't go on our charity missions. We couldn't do the actual work anymore. So we were like, well, how do we continue to, try to share positivity in the world, create value in the world? And we actually, a lot of people kept coming to us and saying, you guys should share like the message more. You should share like the message of why you do what you do and how that all works. And that led to us. First, it was a lot more personal. We're like, if this is how we feel, if we feel that our experiences are the most important things in our lives, how do our friends and family feel? And then we started asking like, okay, well, what about like elderly people that, like retirement homes, or like our grandparents and things like that? And then that led to us going, okay, let's actually take this further, because there's a lot that we're getting here. So we actually hired a firm, and it's still running. Actually, the study, we've surveyed over 20,000 people around the world, asking them, because we wanted to know like what people really care about the most. And that was really just like such a like huge moment. That's why we wrote the book. The overwhelming results, I mean, like everyone on the top of their list, the most valuable thing in their lives was an experience. It wasn't like my car or my watch or my, it was nothing material, like never ever. So that was just such a powerful thing. So, and the questions that we asked in that on top of that were, what are the things you regret the most? And it was again really interesting, the data that we got out of that, because so many things that I guess you wouldn't expect, but it makes so much sense now. And one of those nuggets that I think we love to share is that, and this is why experiences are so valuable to people, is that when you try something new, you don't know what's going to happen, right? So many, like 1/3 of the people said their most valuable experience was a negative experience that they had. But that's just proof that it's not the outcome, it's doing things. It's actually going after things, trying things, doing things, because something that whatever happens, it makes you into a different person, usually a better person. You grow through, and you have experiences that, make you kind of grow as a human. So yeah, the experience today, I'll let Bridget probably add some stuff to that too, because there's a lot of really interesting nuance to the answers. But since we both did it, I'll let my co survey partner help with that.
Yeah, I think
Yes, please.
it's interesting because we all know these things, right? It's like, this isn't a new idea. Like, of course, experiences and like the things and the people in your life are more important than money. Like, everybody knows that, like, inherently, but it's not how we act. At the end of people's lives, 3 out of 4 people will say that they regret the things that they didn't do. It's not the things that they did, right? So, but we're not taught that. We're not taught to like invest in our experiences and our relationships. We're taught that like, if we build up enough wealth, like we'll feel secure and we'll feel happy. And like, that's just not realistic. right? Because
Yes.
people are on their deathbeds. They don't ask to like see their wallet one last time, you know? Like they
I
ask for
hope not. That would be a very sad deathbed. All deathbeds are sad, but that's an especially sad one.
literally, but like, that's like kind of what we're taught. We're like, like at the funeral, like no one's going to say
Yes.
like, I loved this person, they were wealthy. Like they invested in all these stocks that made them so interesting. It's like, no, like their coworkers might talk about how they loved like volunteering with them, or their kids might talk about how they went to national parks when they were kids, or their wife might talk about how they watched the sunset together every night. They don't ever talk about like making money or saving or whatever. Like they always talk about the experiences. So that's why like we wrote this book and like we did this survey, and it's just such an important thing to realize like every single day that we have is a blessing, and like we should take advantage of those days. And again, it's not a new idea, but it's like you hear things like YOLO or like no regrets, but do you actually like live that way? Like most people don't.
Yeah, that was the big
Most people
outcome.
don't.
Mhm.
Yeah. Go ahead, Joe. I cut you off. Sorry.
I was just going to read it. That's really the big outcome. Like this is really something. We're not telling people like some big aha thing. We're telling people what they know, but we're also telling people is that even though you know it, you're probably not acting like that. And you're
Yeah.
going to have regrets if you don't adjust that, because society, the way where we live, is created to force you into a life that doesn't really advocate that or doesn't encourage that in a way that makes it possible for most people.
Yeah, and we're not like saying that money isn't important. Of course, like everybody needs money, and we don't want people to like quit their jobs and like start hissing at people that like live in mansions and drive fancy cars.
Yeah.
But we are saying that it's more important to invest in your daily experiences than like something that might be like forever far away. Like, and you don't know that you're going to get to that someday, right? Like most people will say like, I want to do X someday, but it's like someday actually isn't a day on the calendar. So you should start working on your goals now because you don't know how long you have.
And they're not mutually exclusive. That's the other thing I think it's important. And that's why we share our personal stories. Because for me, I wouldn't have had the opportunity to have the business success that I've had if I hadn't had those life experiences, if I hadn't had that urgency and gone after them. And same with Bridget, maybe she'd be an executive at, Universal Music, but maybe not. Maybe she'd still, be making 25 grand a year in a cubicle, like it really, like she went for a different dream. And it doesn't mean, again, quit your job. And it just means assess. It means like really look at what matters to you, because most people find when they start doing the things that are important to them, whether it's part of their work or peppered in throughout their days, their life becomes better as a whole. And that's the message.
I love that so much. And one of the things that I really love about your book is that you're bridging that gap between people who, like you both said, they know that experiences are the important things. They know that the watch at the end of their life isn't going to make them happy, or the car or whatever, but it feels really polarizing. Either I'm grinding and hustling and I don't care about my fun, or I quit my job and then I live on ramen, but I enjoy the day. And I think the exercises in your book are a really great step into helping people realize that we can not have them be so mutually exclusive. So I've gotten a chance to look at some of the exercises. At the end of each year, I go away to this place called the Getaway House, and I do some reflection and goal setting and all that stuff. And I've already pegged your book as my one for 2023 that I'm going to dive into and complete all the exercises. So I haven't completed them yet, but I would love to talk about some of them. The first one is the treasure map. I think this was really cool. Can you describe to people what the treasure map is and how people can use it? And also, before you do that, I realize we haven't even said the title of the book yet. So let's go ahead and say it right now. It's called Experiential Billionaire, Build a Life Rich in Experiences and Die with No Regrets. And we're going to link that in the show notes, of course. But now, please tell us about the treasure map.
I love that we didn't even mention the book. That's great. That shows you we're just getting right into the message because that's what we care about.
Yes,
Yeah,
and I'll
so
put it in the intro, so they will have heard it already.
no, that's great. Yeah, the cornerstone exercise really of the book, and this is something that really helps people just get onto the path to becoming, experientially rich or investing more time into their valuable experiences, is this treasure map exercise. And this is really born out of like our personal experience, and we've kind of refined it over the years a little bit, but essentially we ask people to take a real moment and pretend their doctor just called and it's not good. You better grab a seat because you've only got a year left to live. And then take that time and really let that sink in and think about the things that you're going to do now in that last year. You have 1 year left. Suddenly your time is finite. This is a big change for most people. Most people have this like false idea that we're going to live to be 100 and die peacefully in bed. Sadly, that's not going to happen for most of us. I hope it does for as many people as possible. But the reality is something's going to happen at some point and you're going to realize you're running out of time. So really, really envision that. Pretend that 1 year's now and write down those things that you're going to be so full of regret if you don't do those things. And it doesn't have to be, climbing Mount Everest or staying in overwater bungalows or anything crazy, but it can be a big goal. You have a year to do it. And even if you don't have the financial means, you can probably figure out a lot of things if it's your last year. So be as big and bold as you want, but really just write those things down that really, really mean a lot to you. And then the next step of the exercise is there's a couple of layers to it, but we stop there and say, okay, like take a look at that list and see how many of those things you're actually currently working toward now. And this is like a big shocking moment for most people, because if you're like most people in our survey and most people that we've done this with, it's none. It's literally like zero. Some people might have one or two like smaller things, but most people aren't working on any of these things that are the most important things literally in their life if you ask them, like, in it with a time constraint. So how do we fix that? Then we really need to adjust that. And we take this exercise and we break it into multiple layers. We do this again. We say, okay, now pretend you have 30 days left to live. And then we'll break it down again one more time and say you have 1 day left to live, and same kind of thing. Like, what could you really do in that time frame? What's the things that you would do? And then look for through lines at the end of that. Once you see the 1 day and the 30 day and the 1 year, it's like, okay, well, a lot of these things involve physical activity or being in nature or creating art or whatever those things are. And then look at your life now. Say, am I currently living a life that is going to promote that? Is it going to allow that? Because if you're, again, maybe it's nature-based, right? Say you live in an inner city apartment and there's not a lot of parks nearby and you get outside once every 4 months. Well, is that going to do it for you? Like, if you fast forward 5 years and you've gone on 7 hikes in 5 years, is that enough? And that's the kind of math that we try to get people to do in their heads. And it's the same kind of thing with, seeing your family, or if you want to create like art or be a musician, or and I think this is a really good time to point out. I'll let Bridget actually like highlight some of this stuff, but it's a good time to point out how much of the stuff, when we asked people what are on these lists that I'm talking about now in your treasure map, and also what were on the survey results that weren't hard things to do or weren't very expensive or difficult things to do. They just take like a little time. So Bridget, why don't you throw out a couple of those like examples? I think that's always fun.
Sure. So yeah, not only are they not hard to do, is that most of the things that people want to do are not that expensive, right? So you might look at our like book title or cover and be like, oh my God, like if I would love to travel the world, I would love to do all this stuff, but I don't have any money. But it's not really about that. It's, when we asked 20,000 people what's like the number one thing they wanted to learn in their life, like it was like the number one answer was learn a musical instrument. So that's something that's like you get the instrument. It could be expensive, but likely you could get something for very cheap. Go on YouTube, learn something. It's free. All you have to do is dedicate like a little bit of time to that number one thing you want to do. The number like 2 and 3 of that question was like, learn to cook. So same thing, go on YouTube, figure it out, buy some cheap ingredients. And then it was like, learn a foreign language. So download an app, work on it 20 minutes a day. Everybody can have 20 minutes a day. I don't care who you are. Obviously, everyone is busy. Everyone has jobs and kids and whatnot. But if you don't have 20 minutes a day to do like the number one thing you want to do, then like, what are you doing with the rest of your time?
Yeah. And this is that math kind of stuff as well, right? Where it's like when you think about, obviously we remember the big trips, and it's definitely worth like planning like your quote unquote bucket listy items. Like if you want to do a road trip in Italy, it might take one person 3 months to plan it because they have the means and the time, and it might take someone else 2 years, but you can still plan it and it's worth doing. Absolutely. But all of those things kind of tie together, right? But the like, for instance, if you learn to speak a little Italian and learn to cook, a trip to Italy is going to be a whole lot more fun. But on top of that, those things are like big moments in time. So it's really all those things you're doing in between and leading up to those bigger experiences that are the bulk of your time. So if you're spending 10 minutes a day, 20 minutes a day, learning how to cook or learning a new instrument or learning a new language or learning how to paint or learning something that's like enriching your life, that is really going to be the bulk of your life, right? That trip's going to be a week or two. So that's what makes those big things really special, is like exclamation points, but you still need to fill those daily moments with value. And the problem with our society, and this is again, something everyone knows, going to come as zero shock to anyone. We live in a world where all of our time is being very, very intentionally stolen from us. Like we have technology, we have entertainment galore. Like you can very easily, very comfortably do just about nothing that you want to do any day of the week if you, just kind of chill out. And that's again, this is why it's not people's fault that they wind up in that situation. It's because we live in a world that's designed very meticulously to do that, to take our time.
Feel our time. And then you look back and you're like, wait, I mean, this happens to me, even though I'm so obsessed with this subject. Still, I'd be like, oh my God, how is it like, October already? Like there's like literally 70 days or something left in the year. Like that's crazy. How did that happen? But that's why we do these exercises around urgency, is because most people don't have urgency for their personal goals. So think about it, like this isn't like, like time constraints are so important because that's what brings you focus. And we all know that like a deadline, like at work or something, will motivate you to get the important things done, but we don't really have that in our own personal life. But so we try to put those like deadlines on our personal life like we would at work, because this is your life and it's happening like right now. You can't just like cram all the things you want to do in at the end and like hope for the best. So you have to like actually start now. And that's why people, that have like near-death experiences, like wake up the next day and they think like, okay, I'm gonna, propose to that girl I love. I'm gonna like take that trip or, run a marathon or, do something that they always wanted to do, is because they suddenly have like a wake-up call and an urgency. So what we're trying to do with all of this is like give people that urgency, but without the near-death experience, hopefully.
Yeah, there's a lot, we contemplate, death in the book a lot. And a lot of people, I think, their initial response when they hear that that's part of like the message is like, oh my gosh, that's so morbid or scary, but it's not, and it shouldn't be. And again, there's another secret we're going to let everybody in on. Everybody's going to die. We're all going to die. It's something we all kind of push off, especially Western culture. We don't talk about it. It's like very taboo. We all just kind of like hide it, behind the curtain. But if you just spend enough time to contemplate it, it's not morbid. You're just thinking about it to give yourself that, reality check of like, the time constraint. And then it becomes a very positive, enriching thing. It's more of a, hey, okay, well, another exercise that we do right, in the same chapter of the book with the treasure map is the memento mori calendar. And that has 76 boxes on it, which is one for every year of the average American lifespan right now. So you take that and you mark off each box for every year that you've lived. And then you can see on average how many years left you have. So a lot of people have never, ever, ever looked at their life like that. And they look at that and they go, oh my gosh, I've got, 26 boxes left. That's it. And when you look at it like that, it's not supposed to be scary. It's supposed to give you that kind of moment to go, okay, well, I said I want to, travel the world, for instance. I want to see, 20 countries, or I want to visit my, grandparents X amount of times. Well, you have a finite amount of time. And if you just look at the boxes left and multiply that, for instance, one of the things we talk about, like kids, right? I have 2 young kids. If I want to like take my kids on camping trips, I've got, 16 boxes left. Every year that goes by that I don't do it, I lose a box, so there's a finite window before they move out of the house. My parents, my mom's she's getting up there in age, and she's pretty healthy now, but she's actually already gone past the window. So I'm already in the bonus round. So if I see my mom, once or twice a year, there's already extra times that I didn't expect to see them. So when you start to put it in that perspective, it just, again, shakes you up enough to give you that urgency to say, well, I'm not okay with seeing my parents 10 more times in my life. I want to make sure I do that more. But yeah, those are the tools
that you want to do, right? Or they want to do.
Yeah.
So one like small thing that this exercise made me do, like when we were writing the book, is I looked at it and I was like, wow, my dad only has like, less than 10 boxes left on this chart. And I was like, the number one thing that he loves in the world is hunting. He's very like Midwestern. And I'd always said like, oh, someday I'll go like hunt with you. And it's not really like, what I really want to do, but like someday I'll do it. And then I looked at this chart and I was like, when am I going to do this? If it's not now, like, I don't know how long he's going to be around and how long he's going to be healthy enough to go sit in the woods and like, when it's like there's weather and there's who knows like what can happen. And so after we wrote this, I immediately booked a trip and I ended up going crossbow hunting with my dad. And it was like, just like, I've never seen him so happy, right? Like in my entire life, because I was finally like doing the thing that he loves. And I just love that. And like, I've noticed, Joe, since we wrote this, like he's went and seen his mom like so many more times than you used to. And it's like because of this urgency. And I think it really can make a difference.
Yeah, I'll give you a really specific example with that, actually. So my brother's kids are older than mine, and my mom's, she's 82, and she's doing amazing for 82. She's very active. She drives around, does all kinds of great stuff. She's pretty healthy. My brother's kids and my mom have done a lot of things together over the years. Like we've met up on vacations in lots of different places and done different things. And my mom just literally last month went on a trip. And in the beginning of the trip, she decided she didn't want to do the trip, her and her husband, and they went home. And she told me when she got home that she thinks she's done traveling. Like this was like the moment. Like I don't think anybody knows when that moment for them is going to come, but she just basically came to the conclusion that it's just hard for her and she doesn't think she wants to do it anymore. So I don't have any more opportunities to do those things with my kids and my mom, but I didn't know when that day was coming. So I'm glad that I spent the time I did doing the stuff I did the last few years, because the day came. So this is the kind of thing that, again, being a little bit more aware of, that there are moments that things are going to change. Like in the book, I can flip that around to like a positive thing too, to like spin it into some of the stuff we talk about on how to continue having fun in your life. You didn't realize, but at some point in your life, you had your last sleepover. You had your last water balloon fight. You had your last, like, why? Like, why do we like stop things? In reverse engineering, like the fun in our lives, like try to bring things back that you can still do while you can still do them, because there will be a point when you can't actually have a water balloon fight, at least not very successfully. So anyway, I think it's just
big
fun.
fans of like play and like keeping a child alive. Like literally earlier I was wearing like my Jurassic Park pajamas, I don't have
love it. I wish you had shown up with them on. That would
I
have been great.
honestly, 2 minutes before I came on, I changed. I was like, I don't know if this is a video podcast.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
next time we'll do
Yeah,
another
we'll post
video
it.
podcast and we'll have you in those pajamas. I think all of the examples and all of the exercises and everything that you've said so far is exactly the antidote that people need to that someday syndrome, which again is
Mm.
something that you address in the book. And it's something I hear every single day in my clients. Yeah, this year is really tough, but next year I'll go on vacation for 1 week. And I'm like, okay, you're sacrificing 100 weeks for 1 week of joy. That math doesn't really add up, but we are so convinced. I've definitely fallen into that trap myself too, that if we just push through this week, this year, this month, this decade, something like that, then the pleasure is going to come. And what you're saying is, no, find a way to have the joy, have the generosity too, give back, find a way to make life now. I appreciate that so much about what you're doing.
Yeah, it creates so many positive ripple effects. When you do those things for yourself, a lot of people, again, we're conditioned, at least I think I was, to feel guilty about doing things for myself that were like experiences for me that I wanted to have. But we've come to like a much different place of understanding where the reason when you see something like whether it's a movie or a story or an article about somebody achieving something and it becomes very popular, this concept, this notion, this story about this thing, it's because watching someone achieve their goals and fulfill their goals and their dreams gives the rest of us permission to fulfill our goals and dreams, right? So it's so important to go out in the world and show up like that. And for me, there's another layer that's been much more real the last few years. And that's that I could sit here and, do 100 podcasts a week and, talk about this and then just work all the time actually, and tell my kids and my wife, how important it is to live life and that they can be anything they want when they grow up and blah, blah, blah. But they're going to do what I do. If I don't actually get out and go do these things and, figure out what my goals are and go do them, like whether it's, go on a snowboard trip or go hiking or go, something that every month, every week, every year, I'm trying to figure out new things to push and experience. That's what they learn. They learn from what we do. And I learn it from the people around me. That's something that I think Bridget's story and my story both illustrate pretty well. Like you show me your friends and I'll show you your future. If you surround yourself by people that are doing things that you want to be doing and want to be like, it's going to allow you to become like that and do that. And that's just really, really powerful. That's a really, really powerful way to live. And from a mental health and just overall health standpoint, I think it's just like nothing more rewarding than knowing you tried. And one last thing I'll just throw out on this particular topic, that the caveat is, so many of the things that we've tried have failed. Like everything wasn't a win. There was so many things I've tried to accomplish that didn't work, and it still was worth doing. I'll go to bed, and rest well at night knowing, well, I tried that. It didn't work out. But
because people
okay.
are too scared to fail. That's
Yeah.
like a society where like if you're a failure, then you're like a loser or something. But that's just not true. I mean, we use the example in the book of surfing. I lived here for like maybe 14 years before I even tried surfing. And it was something that I always thought, wow, that looks so cool. I wish I could do that. It's like, I can do that. Even if I'm not trying to be in the Olympics, right? I'm just trying to be good enough to where I can get up on a board and I can like have that feeling, like that high of like riding a wave, right? So that's the goal. The goal is not to be the best surfer in the world, but people get caught up in this fear of like, well, people are going to think I look stupid if I don't do this well. But that's not true. Like, I think it's, something else that we talk in the book a lot about is like being a beginner, and that's okay. Like, you don't have to be the best at something. If you try a lot of new things, you're going to find things that you're good at. You're going to find things that give you joy. It doesn't mean that you have to be the best in the world.
Absolutely. I want to talk to you all for 15 hours. I know the audience wants to hear from you for 15 hours. So, of course, they're going to go get your book and really dive in and learn more from you. But I'd love for you each to wrap us up by telling the audience one step that they could take to becoming an experiential billionaire or just enriching their life today. Just one little step, one thing they could do.
I'm going to go with something that I haven't really said on anything else. Is I think that this is one of our questions in the survey is think about something that you did as a kid and ask yourself, why don't you do that anymore? And plan doing that thing at some point, like in the next 2 weeks, for example. Say you're like, my favorite thing was, playing hide and seek. Like arrange that with your friends. Like, I know that sounds weird, but it will be more memorable than any cocktail party that you have with your friends. I promise with you. Or if you're like, I used to love catching fireflies or just anything, just try to plan that, like laser tag, plan that in the next couple of weeks. That's my advice.
Are we both going or is it just one answer?
No, you get to go, of course.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure, but I'll say, I think look at something, find something that you're putting off, because everybody has something that they want to do that they've been putting off that's on their quote unquote someday calendar. Find that thing and put it on your calendar. Pick a date in the future. It doesn't have to be next week or next month, but a date that could feasibly work, and actually put it on your calendar, and then tell someone that you care about that you did that, and that's your accountability partner, and you want them to check in with you and figure out what the plans are. And the last little part of that, this is all, I know it sounds like more than one step, but this is all one step, because these are easy to do. You put it on the calendar, tell somebody about it, and then figure out one thing you can do toward that thing. So it could be, say you want to go skydiving, what you're going to do today, figure out one thing you can do today. Maybe it's look up where are skydiving places. You can do that in 5 minutes on the internet. And now you've got a actual bit of information toward that goal. So taking little tiny steps towards a bigger goal are super important. Getting it on your calendar, having an accountability partner, and then building toward it with little steps. That's the key.
So good. I am already, my brain is rolling thinking about my action steps from each of you. So thank you for that. Like I said, I know people want to get their hands on the copy of the book, Experiential Billionaire. So can you tell people where they can get the book? We'll include the link in the show notes as well, and then where they can learn from each of you.
Sure. So the book is available on Amazon, also a lot of other places, but our website is experientialbillionaire.com. And then our personal sites are bridgethilton.com and joehuff.com. And we have a lot of free stuff on our website as well. So a lot of free tools and guides and whatnot.
Amazing. We will include all of those links in the show notes. Bridget and Joe, thank you so much. I really appreciate everything that you're doing for the world. And we should mention again that some of the proceeds from the book do still go to helping people with hearing needs. Is that true?
The book, no, the book is actually its own entity. So everything.
Okay, I'll edit that part out then. It's okay. Well, you're still doing good work in the world. So let me try the closing again, and then we'll scratch that and let me make a note.
That's funny. No one's actually said that before. So I wonder if it's something that we're putting out in the world and not noticing.
Well, I think I don't know. I think that was just an assumption of mine that was false, but you've already done plenty of things to help people. So scratch that from the record, and no feelings of we should or any of that. No. I hate shoulds. But let me try again. Bridget and Joe, thank you so much for coming on Wellness Your Way. I had a great time today. I know our audience feels inspired and is ready to learn more from your book. Thank you for everything that you're doing for the world.
Thank you for having us. Yeah.